Welcome back to the channel, and today we're gonna be talking about something light. Discrimination.
This strip in Cape Town, South Africa, divides the beachside community of Strand from the township of Nomzamo. They're only a few meters apart, but the people on each side live very different lives. Strand has backyards and driveways. Nomzamo is much more dense, and the people here have fewer basic services. Less piped water, less internet access, and Nomzamo is majority black, while the area across the line is majority white.
Shocking! I'm silly.
If we use dots on a map to represent race, you can see how stark that divide is. If we zoom out to the whole city, we can see it's actually everywhere.
This is actual division, what they're showing me. These pockets of color. Wow.
And this is the case across much of South Africa. The color of your skin here often determines where you live. This map shows where jobs and opportunities are primarily concentrated in Cape Town. And this is where most of the city's black people live, in informal settlements called townships on the city's periphery.
People have to move by public transport for up to 3 hours a day, and they can't take care of their obligations in the community with the rest of the family because they're always working and they're always traveling.
Yeah, this man has a point. So a little background into my history with South Africa. I'm not from South Africa, first of all. And I went there. I went there for schooling. You know, I used to also go there to visit. Funny enough, I thought South Africa was this amazing progressive country because every school break, I used to go there with like the family for vacation, and the people were so nice, man. It's a beautiful place for vacation. Now, when I went there later on in life as a adult, and I went there for school, I actually started seeing some cracks and some problems and some sketchiness because I started to live the South African experience, if you can call it that way. And yeah, one of the things that would come up as a student is that a lot of the South African black students, they had to commute for a very, very long time. And they get to class, they're tired. Even when they go back home, they're tired. So it would also affect their productivity when it comes to their schoolwork. And I hated this because the narrative was the black kids are lazy, they don't submit in time. But that was not the case because Van der, I don't want to say it, but Van der, finish it, lived 5 minutes away and he had a car, you know, because that's how their family rolled. And you'd find that, you know, first people in class, first people to submit, the first people to do everything. And it wasn't necessarily because of their work ethic, which I think they do have, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't because of a lack of work ethic from the black students. It's just that, anyway, I'm going into a long tangent, but that was something I noticed.
For decades, South Africa was under apartheid, a system that wrote segregation into law. A white minority controlled where non-white people could live, work, exist. Many were forced out of their homes.
Some people think the land was acquired freely. I mean, the Dutch just sailed there and there was empty land.
You get it? If you don't get it, forget about it.
In the 1600s, the Dutch took over the southern tip of Africa to supply ships with food along the trade route to Asia. 150 years later, Britain seized it and named it Cape Colony. Many Dutch colonists moved here, further inland, to escape British rule and continue exploiting enslaved people. Just like the Dutch, the British used Cape Colony as a strategic location for trade. It wasn't economically significant. But in the 1870s, that changed when the British started mining diamonds there.
Basically, the British are the nuisance of this world. The British are... Oh my gosh, the British. In any case, they found gold now, and diamonds rather. Now, my issue is this. They find gold, they call it igoli and all that stuff. But recently, when black people thought that they discovered gold, it's funny all of a sudden. But the whole country basically was built on the backs of raw minerals from said black people country. Give me strength, someone.
Suddenly, Cape Colony was one of Britain's most prized and exploited colonies.
Exploited. Keyword, exploited.
The green areas on this map show the black regions of Cape Colony, largely left out of the railroad economy. Racial inequality in Cape Colony was being reinforced by location. To keep it that way, the colonial government started writing segregation into law. The Native Lands Act of 1913 pushed black people into these areas, only 8% of South Africa's land.
Did this white lady just say 8%? 8%.
And restricted them from owning land everywhere else. Or relocated them to the edges of the major cities to work for white people. In 1934, Britain's legal hold in what was now the Union of South Africa officially ended. The remaining white minority, the descendants of Dutch colonists, took control, and they built on the foundation the British were leaving behind. Between 1949 and 1971, the all-white government passed 148 laws solidifying apartheid. Around the country, black South Africans were moved into these areas, called homelands or Bantustans. Bantustans were rural areas and had underdeveloped economies. Many of them were in the areas Britain had already excluded from the railway economy, and where black land ownership had been restricted to. Black people were forced to carry passbooks that specified where they were allowed to work or travel to.
The most prime land and the land closest to high-valued property was allocated to white people.
Okay, let me give you guys a little story time. So, obviously, I lived in South Africa for a while, and I dated a South African. So, she lived in Soweto. Now, the same thing kind of happened in Johannesburg or Gauteng, where basically the high-value land was also allocated to white people and the black people were pushed out. Now, obviously, they're talking about Cape Town in this instance, but that also happened across the country. And Soweto was a result of that happening. Now, me, ignorant Swazi man, I say, babe, I'd like to see where you live. I'ma come over. I'ma come.
Special pain.
Did I not travel the whole goddamn day? That trip was so long, I thought I was going back to my country. That trip was so long, I thought I was going back in time. Bruh. Soweto is far from Johannesburg. Like, it's insane. I could not believe it. Like, and the issue is, this was not even a decade ago. So it's present time. Now imagine back in the day where transportation was even harder, where you had passports to move around, where if you were caught out at a certain time, you were jailed, beaten, whatever. And it's just, I don't know, man. But at the end of the day, all I know that it's the ANC's fault.
This kind of violence against non-white people was commonplace around the country. But after decades of pressure, both from within South Africa and abroad, apartheid rule finally came to an end. The new government lifted restrictions on where people could live. Millions of people who had been excluded from economic development for centuries migrated to major cities looking for basic services.
Something interesting that one of my lecturers actually said in varsity was this. The reason there's so much traffic on these main roads, Jozi to Pretoria, is because the roads were not actually meant for that volume of people. So now that you restricted apartheid and you said that black people can have economical power and they can work wherever they want to work, they can live wherever they want to live, they become part of the, transportation system, and they buy cars and they move their families around. And the highways were not meant for that volume. It was only meant for that minority white people. So now that black people and other, ethnicities got the leverage, got the freedom to do that, the roads were packed. So there you go. A little information I'm passing down to you. I could be talking shit. Therefore, hence, it's not on me. My lecturer said it.
For any family with no prospect of employment, the most rational, logical choice to make is to migrate to an urban center.
They settled where there was empty land, creating townships on the peripheries of major cities.
But it had a number of unforeseen consequences, the most important of which is that the only land that could be used for the public housing program was on the periphery of the city. And for that reason, a brilliant intention to overcome the apartheid legacy unintentionally reproduced the very same legacy it was trying to undo.
Oh my days. Then what's the solution? I mean, because if Julia says, bring back the land, it's a fight.
With or without you, people are going to occupy land. Yes, what's your point of order, honorable member?
What rule are you quoting that forbids the Commander-in-Chief speaking about land occupation in South Africa? We have got absolute freedom of expression in this parliament, as is outlined in the Constitution.
And modern problems require modern solutions.
What must happen? What must happen? Can someone make it make sense to me? And the shocking thing about this is that, again, I'm an ignorant Swazi. Literally on a road, on a road, there's shacks this side, and then there's mansions this side. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? What is this situation? It's mind blowing. And for some reason, I think those estates on this side actually have high walls because they want to block out the view, because your property price goes down when you can just over the wall, you can see the poverty. You can they'll say security reasons, but you must make the wall high enough so that you cannot see the poverty. It's the wall height matters very, very much. Okay, there is crime as well, but you don't want to see them. You don't want to see them. You don't want to see them.
Today, 60% of the mostly black population of Cape Town lives in these townships at the edge of the city. The thing is, Cape Town city center has land to develop, but because of its location, it's valuable. So it usually gets sold to private developers.
And it's shocking because in Gauteng, you see a lot of vacant land. And you ask yourself, who owns this land? People have to commute for hours on end to get to work. And but I guess, I don't know, man. ANC, it's all the ANC's fault. That's all I know. It's the ANC is at fault for this.
We haven't done the difficult and the painful work to confront what the intergenerational consequences are of colonialism, of apartheid.
No, this man is lying. We have addressed it. We have shot beer commercials where, there's diversity. It's solved. I don't know what he's talking about. We haven't addressed it. Stop it.
The story of Cape Town and South Africa's racial segregation starts far in the past, but it's very much entangled with the present. Apartheid and colonialism here are over, but many of the barriers they built have yet to be dismantled.
The kind of psychic scars that's left on individuals and on communities, we haven't begun the work of saying, how do we live together, right? In the face of that history.
Yeah, okay, so that was VOX with the insightful take on the situation in South Africa. And for the most part, I know I tell jokes, but I agree with what they say. And what this guy said at the end was very profound because he said not only do they have to address the economical side of things, but they also have to address the psychological part, because living in South Africa for a while, I also saw that inferior / superior mentality that certain people had. And yeah, South Africa still has a long way to go, but I like that, it's a very progressive country. They have dialogue, they open up to each other. I think South Africa, for the most part, is on track to doing something about it. We can always complain about the ANC as a scapegoat, but I think it's everyone's responsibility to look deep and figure out what they can do in society to make the situation better. Which reminds me of my country, because we also have our own issues, and I am here to tell you this. I am sick and tired of